The old brick building stood at the edge of town like a silent sentinel, its windows dark and hollow, the faded letters above the entrance barely legible. Hawthorne High School. For decades, it had been the heart of the community, a place where generations of students had learned, laughed, and grown. But beneath the surface of everyday school life, there was a secret, a shadow that stretched long and deep, whispered about in hushed tones in the hallways, and shared only in the safety of close friends. Hawthorne High was known far and wide as the most haunted school in America. It wasn't just the peeling paint or the creaking floors that gave the building its eerie reputation. It was the stories told by students who had lived through nights they could never forget, encounters that left them questioning reality, and moments when the past seemed to reach out and touch the present. These weren't just ghost stories told to scare freshmen on their first day. These were real experiences, etched into the memories of those who had walked the halls long after the final bell. The legend began long before the school's current generation of students. Built in 1923, Hawthorne High had seen its share of tragedy. Fires, accidents, and unexplained disappearances had marked its history, each event adding another layer to the building's dark mystique. But it was the students, the ones who had dared to stay late, to explore the forgotten corners, to listen closely in the dead of night, who carried the true weight of the haunting. One of the most chilling tales came from Emily, a senior who had spent countless hours in the school library, studying late into the night. She described a presence that wasn't just a shadow or a flicker of light, but something that felt alive, watching, waiting. "It's like the air changes," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The temperature drops suddenly, and you can hear footsteps echoing down the hall, but when you look, no one's there. It's like the building breathes, and sometimes it sighs. Emily's story was far from unique. Across the school, students shared similar experiences, lockers slamming shut on their own, whispers in empty classrooms, and the unmistakable feeling of being followed. Some spoke of a figure seen in the old gymnasium, a girl in a faded white dress who vanished when approached. Others told of strange lights flickering in the basement, where the original boiler room still hummed with a ghostly energy. But what made Hawthorne High truly terrifying wasn't just the individual encounters. It was the way the haunting seemed to weave itself into the fabric of the school's daily life. Teachers reported unexplained cold spots in their classrooms, and janitors spoke of doors opening and closing without cause. Even the school's mascot, a once proud hawk statue perched above the main entrance, was said to move its head ever so slightly when no one was watching. The students, however, were the ones who bore the brunt of the haunting. Many had stories of late-night study sessions interrupted by strange noises, or of waking up in the middle of the night to find their bedroom doors creaking open, even though they lived miles from the school. Some believed the spirits followed them home, drawn by the energy of their youthful fear and curiosity. One student, Marcus, recounted a night when he and a group of friends decided to explore the school after hours. Armed with flashlights and a mix of bravado and nervous laughter, they crept through the hallways, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. As they reached the old auditorium, the air grew heavy, and the temperature plummeted. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. In the silence that followed, Marcus swore he heard a voice, soft, almost pleading, calling his name. The group fled, but Marcus never forgot the feeling of icy fingers brushing his arm as he ran. These stories, passed from student to student, created a shared mythology that bound the school community together. But they also raised questions. What was the source of the haunting? Why did the spirits linger here, in a place meant for learning and growth? And most unsettling of all, was there something darker lurking beneath the surface, something that the school's history only hinted at? To understand the haunting, one had to look back to the school's earliest days. The land on which Hawthorne High was built had once been home to a small settlement, long abandoned after a series of mysterious disappearances in the late 1800s. When construction began on the school, workers reported strange occurrences, tools disappearing, unexplained cold drafts, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. Some believed the spirits of those lost settlers had never left, trapped between worlds by unfinished business or a terrible secret. Over the years, the school's history was marked by a series of tragedies that seemed to feed the haunting. A fire in the 1940s had claimed the lives of several students and a beloved teacher, their names still etched on a memorial plaque in the main hallway. In the 1970s, a student had vanished without a trace during a school dance, sparking a search that lasted weeks but ended in silence. Each event added to the school's dark reputation, and each new generation of students inherited the legacy of fear. Despite the fear, or perhaps because of it, the students of Hawthorne High developed a unique relationship with the haunting. Some embraced it, forming clubs dedicated to exploring the paranormal and documenting their experiences. Others approached it with skepticism, determined to find rational explanations for the strange phenomena. But even the most skeptical couldn't deny the feeling that something was there, watching, waiting, and sometimes reaching out. The school administration, caught between concern and disbelief, maintained a cautious stance. Officially, the school was a safe place for learning, and any reports of hauntings were dismissed as rumors or the product of overactive imaginations. But behind closed doors, some staff members admitted to feeling uneasy, especially during late-night events or when walking the empty halls after hours. One teacher, Mrs. Caldwell, shared her own experience. She had been working late one evening when she heard the unmistakable sound of a piano playing from the music room. Curious, she followed the music, only to find the room empty and the piano keys still. The melody lingered in the air, haunting and beautiful, before fading into silence. Mrs. Caldwell said it was a moment that stayed with her, a reminder that the school held memories far beyond the textbooks and lessons. As the years passed, technology brought new ways to explore the haunting. Students armed with cameras, voice recorders, and EMF detectors sought to capture evidence of the supernatural. Some nights, the school would be filled with the glow of flashlights and the hum of equipment, as young investigators chased shadows and listened for whispers. The results were mixed: strange noises, unexplained shadows, and occasional cold spots, but no definitive proof. Yet the experiences were enough to keep the legend alive. The haunting of Hawthorne High was more than just a collection of ghost stories. It was a living, breathing part of the school's identity, shaping the way students experienced their time there. For some, it was a source of fear and anxiety. For others, a thrilling mystery to unravel. But for all, it was a reminder that the past was never truly gone, and that some places held on to their secrets long after the last bell rang. And so, the stories continued, whispered in the hallways, shared around campfires, and passed down to new students who would one day add their own chapters to the school's haunted history. Because at Hawthorne High, the ghosts were never far away. They were part of the school's soul, watching, waiting, and reminding everyone who walked those halls that some stories never end. The night air outside Hawthorne High was thick with anticipation, the kind that only comes when the sun dips below the horizon and the world seems to hold its breath. Inside, the school was quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an eerie stillness that settled over the empty hallways like a shroud. But for a group of students gathered in the old auditorium, the night was just beginning. They called themselves the Hawthorne Paranormal Society, a mix of skeptics, believers, and thrill-seekers drawn together by a shared fascination with the school's haunted reputation. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a handful of homemade gadgets, they were determined to uncover the truth behind the stories that had haunted their school for generations. Leading the group was Sarah, a junior with a sharp mind and a fearless spirit. She had grown up hearing the tales from older siblings and neighbors, but unlike many, She wasn't content to simply accept the stories as fact or fiction. "I want to know what's really here," she said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Not just the scary stuff, but the history, the why. What's keeping these spirits tied to this place?" The group moved cautiously through the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing softly against the worn linoleum floors. Every creak and groan of the old building seemed amplified in the silence, setting nerves on edge. They paused at the entrance to the basement, a place rumored to be the epicenter of the haunting. The air was colder here, heavier, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Sarah flicked on her EMF detector, the device buzzing faintly as it scanned the room. "This is where the old boiler used to be," she explained. "Before the fire in the 40s, this was the heart of the school's heating system. Some say the fire started here, and that's where the spirits first appeared." As they descended the narrow stairs, the beam of their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing peeling paint, rusted pipes, and shadows that seemed to shift just beyond the light's reach. The group spread out, setting up cameras and recording devices, their whispered conversations barely audible. Then, without warning, a sudden chill swept through the room. The temperature dropped sharply, and the EMF detector's buzzing intensified. Sarah's breath caught. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, a faint tapping sound echoed from the far corner of the basement. The group froze, eyes wide, flashlights darting toward the noise. It came again, slow, deliberate, like someone knocking on a wooden door. "Is someone there?" Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Silence. Then, a soft whisper, almost too faint to hear, drifted through the air. "Help me." The words sent a shiver down their spines. The group exchanged glances, the weight of the moment settling over them. This was no longer just a game or a curiosity. Something was here, reaching out from the shadows. Over the next hour, the students documented strange phenomena, flickering lights, unexplained cold spots, and fleeting glimpses of movement caught on camera. One of the members, Jake, swore he saw a figure standing at the top of the stairs, watching them before disappearing into the darkness. As dawn approached, the group gathered their equipment and made their way back to the main hall, their faces pale but eyes alight with a mix of fear and excitement. They knew they had experienced something real, something that defied explanation. But for Sarah, the night raised more questions than answers. Who are they? She wondered aloud. Why are they still here? And what do they want from us? To find answers, Sarah began digging into the school's archives, poring over old yearbooks, newspaper clippings, and forgotten records. What she uncovered was a tapestry of stories, some tragic, some mysterious, all connected by a thread of loss and longing. There was the story of Margaret Ellis, a music teacher who had died in the fire that ravaged the school decades ago. Known for her kindness and dedication, Margaret's spirit was said to linger in the music room, where the piano sometimes played by itself, filling the empty space with haunting melodies. Then there was Tommy Reynolds, a student who vanished during the 1973 school dance. His disappearance remained unsolved, a wound in the school's history that never fully healed. Some believed his restless spirit wandered the halls, searching for answers that would never come. Sarah also discovered accounts of a janitor named Mr. Hargrove, who had worked at the school for over 40 years. He spoke of strange occurrences, tools moving on their own, voices in empty rooms, and a feeling of being watched. He believed the school was built on land that held a dark past, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin. As Sarah pieced together these stories, she realized the haunting was not a single event or entity, but a complex web of histories and emotions, layered over time. The spirits were not just ghosts. They were echoes of lives interrupted, memories trapped in a place that refused to forget. Meanwhile, the students continued to share their own experiences. Jenna, a sophomore, described waking up in the middle of the night to find her bedroom door slowly creaking open, despite living miles from the school. "It felt like someone was watching me," she said. "I couldn't move, couldn't scream, just frozen." Another student, Carlos, spoke of a shadowy figure he saw standing at the end of the hallway during a late-night study session. "It wasn't scary at first," he said. "More like sad, like it wanted to tell me something, but couldn't." These stories, while chilling, also revealed a strange tenderness, a sense that the spirits were not malevolent, but trapped, longing for connection. The school's haunting had become a part of its identity, shaping the way students experienced their time there. For some, it was a source of fear, for others, a mystery to solve. But for all, it was a reminder that the past was never truly gone. As the years passed, the legend of Hawthorne High grew, drawing attention from paranormal investigators, journalists, and curious visitors. The school became a place where history and mystery intertwined, where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred. Yet, despite the attention, the haunting remained elusive, a puzzle with pieces that never quite fit together. The spirits of Hawthorne High continued to watch and wait, their stories unfolding in whispers and shadows, inviting those brave enough to listen. The following weeks after that chilling night in the basement, the stories only grew more vivid and personal. Students who had once dismissed the tales as mere legend found themselves caught in moments they couldn't explain, moments that blurred the line between the natural and the supernatural. It was as if the school itself was alive, breathing in the fears and hopes of those who walked its halls. One of the most compelling accounts came from Lily, a quiet junior who had always been fascinated by the school's history. She had spent hours in the archives, piecing together old photographs and newspaper clippings. But it wasn't until she stayed late one evening that she truly understood the haunting's grip. Lily had been working on a history project in the library, the only place quiet enough to concentrate. As the clock ticked past midnight, the building seemed to shift around her. The usual hum of the fluorescent lights dimmed, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed in from all sides. She felt a sudden chill, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Then, from somewhere deep within the stacks, she heard it, a soft, melodic humming. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it grew steadily louder, filling the air with a haunting tune that seemed both beautiful and sorrowful. Lily's heart pounded as she followed the sound, her footsteps echoing softly on the tiled floor. The humming led her to a forgotten corner of the library, where an old, dust-covered piano sat beneath a cracked window. The keys moved gently, as if played by invisible hands, producing the eerie melody that had drawn her in. Lily reached out, her fingers trembling, but the music stopped abruptly as she touched the keys. For a moment, the room was still. Then, a whisper floated through the air, so soft she almost missed it. "Don't forget me." Lily froze, her breath caught in her throat. The voice was filled with longing, a plea that echoed through the years. She knew then that the spirits haunting Hawthorne High were not just restless, they were desperate to be remembered. Her story spread quickly, adding another layer to the school's growing mythology. Students began to share their own encounters with the piano's ghostly music, some hearing it during late-night study sessions, others catching fleeting glimpses of a woman in a white dress near the music room. But the haunting wasn't confined to the school's interior. The grounds themselves held secrets, places where the veil between worlds seemed thinnest. The old oak tree in the courtyard, gnarled and twisted with age, was said to be a gathering place for spirits. Students reported strange lights flickering among its branches and whispers carried on the wind. One evening, a group of friends decided to test the legend. Armed with flashlights and a voice recorder, they approached the tree just as dusk settled over the campus. The air was thick with anticipation, the fading light casting long shadows across the grass. As they stood beneath the tree, the recorder picked up faint voices, indistinct but unmistakably human. The friends exchanged nervous glances, their bravado waning in the face of the unknown. Suddenly, A cold breeze swept through the courtyard, rustling leaves and sending a shiver down their spines. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged, a young girl, pale and translucent, her eyes filled with sadness. She reached out a hand, as if seeking help, before fading into the night. The friends fled, their hearts racing, but the experience left an indelible mark. The haunting was no longer just stories told in whispers. It was a living reality, a presence that touched every corner of Hawthorne High. Teachers, too, found themselves caught in the school's spectral web. Mr. Thompson, the science teacher, was known for his skepticism, dismissing ghost stories as childish nonsense. But even he couldn't deny the strange occurrences that plagued his classroom. Late one afternoon, as he prepared for a lesson, the lights flickered and dimmed. His computer screen glitched, displaying static before returning to normal. Then, the temperature dropped suddenly, and a faint scent of smoke filled the air. Mr. Thompson turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him inside. He tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic rising, he called out, but only silence answered. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, and the room returned to normal. Mr. Thompson never spoke of the incident, but his students noticed a change, a newfound respect for the stories that had once seemed so far-fetched. The school's haunting was a puzzle with no easy answers, a tapestry woven from tragedy, memory, and mystery. It was a place where the past refused to stay buried, where the echoes of lost souls lingered in the shadows. For the students of Hawthorne High, the haunting was both a curse and a bond. It set them apart, connecting them through shared experiences that defied explanation. It was a reminder that some places hold on to their secrets, and some stories never truly end. As the school year progressed, the Paranormal Society continued their investigations, documenting every strange sound, every flicker of light, every unexplained chill. Their footage and recordings became a testament to the school's restless spirit, a chronicle of the unseen world that coexisted with their own. But with each new discovery came new questions. What was the source of the haunting? Were the spirits trapped by unfinished business, or was there something darker at play? And most importantly, could they find a way to bring peace to the restless souls of Hawthorne High? Sarah, Lily, and the others knew their journey was far from over. The school's haunted history was a living story, one that demanded to be told and understood. And as they delved deeper into the mystery, they realized that the answers might lie not just in the past, but in the connections they forged in the present. Because at Hawthorne High, the ghosts were more than just memories. They were a part of the school's soul, a reminder that some places hold on to their secrets long after the last bell rings. The deeper the students dug into the history of Hawthorne High, the more they realized that the haunting was not a simple tale of restless spirits, but a complex web of intertwined lives, tragedies, and secrets that span generations. Each story they uncovered seemed to pull them further into the mystery, revealing layers of sorrow and unresolved pain that clung to the school like a thick fog. One of the most haunting discoveries came from an old diary found tucked away in the archives, belonging to a girl named Eleanor Whitman, a student from the 1920s. Her entries painted a vivid picture of life at Hawthorne High nearly a century ago, the friendships, the hopes, and the fears. But as the pages turned, the tone shifted. Eleanor wrote of strange occurrences, whispers in the hallways, shadows that moved without source, and a growing sense of dread that she couldn't explain. Her final entry was chilling. It spoke of a night when she and several classmates had stayed late for a school play rehearsal. As the clock struck midnight, Eleanor described feeling a cold presence in the auditorium, a figure standing in the wings, watching silently. She wrote that she had tried to speak, but no words came, and then everything went dark. The diary ended abruptly, with no explanation of what happened next. Eleanor's fate remained a mystery, but her words echoed through time, a silent plea for understanding. Sarah shared the diary with the Paranormal Society, and it became a focal point for their investigations. They returned to the auditorium, retracing Eleanor's steps, hoping to connect with the spirit that had left such a haunting record. One night, as they sat in the darkened theater, the air thick with anticipation, the temperature dropped suddenly. A faint glow appeared near the stage, and a soft, sorrowful melody filled the room, the same tune that had drawn Lily to the piano in the library. Then, a figure materialized, a young girl in a vintage dress, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. She reached out, as if trying to communicate, before fading into the shadows. The experience left the group shaken but determined. Eleanor's story was not just history. It was a living part of the school's haunting, a thread that connected past and present. Meanwhile, the school staff grappled with the growing awareness of the supernatural presence. Principal Harris, a pragmatic man who had long dismissed ghost stories as distractions, found himself questioning his beliefs after a series of unexplained events. One evening, as he worked late in his office, the lights flickered and dimmed. The temperature dropped, and he heard the faint sound of footsteps pacing outside his door. When he opened it, the hallway was empty, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next day, he confided in Mrs. Caldwell, the music teacher, who shared her own experiences with the piano's ghostly melodies. Together, they began to consider that the school's haunting was more than folklore. It was a reality that needed to be acknowledged and respected. The students, too, found themselves changed by their encounters. Jenna, who had once been terrified by the open door in her bedroom, began to see the spirits not as threats, but as lost souls seeking connection. Carlos, who had seen the shadowy figure in the hallway, started to document his experiences, hoping to give voice to those who could no longer speak. The Paranormal Society grew, attracting more members eager to explore the mysteries of Hawthorne High. They held meetings, shared stories, and planned investigations, creating a community bound by curiosity and courage. But as their knowledge deepened, so did the dangers. Strange accidents began to occur, equipment malfunctioned, members reported feeling unwell after investigations, and some even spoke of nightmares that left them shaken. Sarah realized that the spirits were not just trying to communicate, they were warning them. Something darker lurked beneath the surface, a force that had been awakened by their probing. Determined to protect their school and each other, the group sought out experts in the paranormal, hoping to find guidance. They connected with Dr. Evelyn Moore, a historian and paranormal researcher who had studied haunted sites across the country. Dr. Moore visited Hawthorne High, bringing with her a wealth of knowledge and a calm, reassuring presence. She explained that places like Hawthorne were often crossroads, where the veil between worlds was thin and where unresolved trauma could manifest as hauntings. She warned that the spirits were not always benign, and that the group needed to approach their investigations with respect and caution. "You're dealing with energies that have been here for decades, maybe centuries," she said. "They carry pain, anger, and confusion. Your job is to listen, but also to protect yourselves." Under Dr. Moore's guidance, the Paranormal Society developed protocols for their investigations, rituals to cleanse spaces, ways to communicate safely, and methods to document their findings without disturbing the spirits. Their next investigation took them to the school's basement once again, the place where the fire had started and where many believed the haunting was strongest. Armed with new tools and knowledge, they descended into the darkness, ready to face whatever awaited. As they moved through the cold, damp corridors, the atmosphere thickened. The EMF detectors spiked, and the temperature plummeted. Suddenly, a low moan echoed through the tunnels, sending chills down their spines. Sarah called out, her voice steady but filled with empathy. "We're here to help. We want to understand." For a moment, the darkness seemed to pulse, and then a figure appeared, a man, his face etched with sorrow and regret. He reached out, and Sarah felt a cold touch on her hand. The spirit's story unfolded in fragments, a tale of loss, betrayal, and a fire that had claimed innocent lives. He was one of the victims, trapped by the trauma of that night, unable to move on. The group listened, offering words of comfort and promises to remember. Slowly, the figure faded, leaving behind a sense of peace that hadn't been there before. The experience marked a turning point. The haunting was not just about fear, it was about healing. The spirits were trapped by their stories, and by acknowledging them, the students could help set them free. Back in the daylight, the school felt different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. The students carried with them a new understanding, a respect for the past, and a hope for the future. But the mystery was far from over. Hawthorne High still held secrets, and the students knew that their journey was just beginning. The days that followed the basement encounter were filled with a strange mix of excitement and unease. The Paranormal Society had touched something profound, and the ripple effects were felt throughout the school. Students who had once been indifferent to the haunting now found themselves drawn into the mystery, their curiosity mingling with a growing respect for the spirits that lingered within the walls. One afternoon, Sarah sat with her closest friends in the cafeteria, the hum of chatter around them fading as they discussed their next steps. "We've learned so much," she said, her eyes bright with determination. "But there's still so much we don't understand. We need to find out more about the people who lived and died here, their stories, their struggles." Lily nodded, flipping through a worn notebook filled with notes and sketches. "I've been digging into the town's history, too. There are records of accidents, illnesses, and even a few unsolved crimes connected to the school. It's like the building holds all these memories, and they're trying to tell us something." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden chill that swept through the room, causing the hair on the back of Sarah's neck to stand on end. Across the cafeteria, a group of students glanced nervously toward the old trophy case, where the glass seemed to shimmer with an unnatural glow. It was moments like these that reminded them the haunting was never far away, a constant presence, watching and waiting. As the weeks passed, the Paranormal Society expanded its reach, inviting students from all grades to share their experiences and participate in investigations. They held meetings in the library, where stories were exchanged and theories debated. Some students spoke of fleeting shadows, others of voices carried on the wind, and a few even claimed to have seen full apparitions. One of the most compelling stories came from Marcus, a senior who had always been fascinated by the school's darker history. He recounted a night when he stayed late to finish a project in the science lab. As he packed up his things, he noticed the lights flickering and the temperature dropping. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, and he was plunged into darkness. Panicked, Marcus fumbled for his phone, its flashlight cutting through the blackness. That's when he saw it, a figure standing at the far end of the room, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The figure didn't move, but Marcus felt its gaze pierce through him, filling him with a cold dread. He bolted for the door, which thankfully opened easily this time. But the memory stayed with him, a reminder that the school's haunting was very real. Teachers, too, found themselves caught in the web of the supernatural. Mrs. Caldwell, the music teacher, shared another experience that sent chills through the Paranormal Society. One evening, as she was locking up the music room, she heard the faint sound of a violin playing a mournful tune. She followed the music to the practice room, only to find it empty. The melody lingered in the air, haunting and beautiful, before fading into silence. Mrs. Caldwell said it was a moment that reminded her the spirits were not just echoes of the past, but living memories that refused to be forgotten. The school's haunting was becoming a shared experience, a thread that connected students and staff across generations. It was a reminder that Hawthorne High was more than just a building. It was a repository of stories, emotions, and histories that shaped the community. But with the growing awareness came new challenges. Some students reported feeling overwhelmed by the haunting, their sleep disturbed by nightmares, and their days shadowed by unease. The Paranormal Society worked to support each other, emphasizing the importance of respect and caution in their investigations. Dr. Evelyn Moore continued to guide them, offering insights into the nature of hauntings and the importance of empathy. These spirits are trapped by their stories, she explained. By listening and acknowledging them, you can help them find peace. But you must also protect yourselves. The emotional toll can be heavy. Under her guidance, the group developed rituals to cleanse spaces and ground themselves before investigations. They learned to recognize signs of distress and to step back when the energy became too intense. One night, the Paranormal Society planned their most ambitious investigation yet, a full sweep of the school, from the basement to the attic, aiming to document every corner where the haunting was strongest. As they moved through the halls, their equipment picking up spikes in electromagnetic activity, they encountered moments that sent shivers down their spines. Doors creaked open and shut, whispers echoed in empty rooms, and shadows danced just beyond the reach of their flashlights. In the attic, they found old trunks filled with forgotten belongings, letters, photographs, and school memorabilia that seemed to pulse with history. As they sifted through the items, a sudden gust of cold air swept through the space, and a soft voice whispered, "Remember me." The group fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. It was a reminder that the haunting was not just about fear, but about memory and connection. Back in the safety of the library, they reviewed their recordings, finding evidence of unexplained sounds and movements. The footage was grainy, the voices faint, but the impact was undeniable. The haunting of Hawthorne High was a living story, one that unfolded with each new generation. It was a reminder that some places hold on to their secrets, and some stories never truly end. For the students, the haunting was both a challenge and a gift, a chance to connect with the past, to understand the lives that had come before, and to find their own place in the ongoing story of their school. As the school year drew to a close, Sarah reflected on how much they had learned and how far they still had to go. The haunting was no longer just a mystery to solve. It was a part of who they were. And as the sun set over Hawthorne High, casting long shadows across the campus, the spirits watched and waited, their stories alive in the hearts of those who dared to listen. The summer break brought a strange quiet to Hawthorne High. The usual hum of students and teachers was replaced by silence, the empty halls echoing with memories of the past year. But for Sarah and the Paranormal Society, the haunting was far from over. The long months without the distractions of school gave them time to reflect, research, and prepare for what they hoped would be their most revealing investigation yet. Sarah spent countless hours in the town's historical society, digging through dusty records and old newspapers. She uncovered stories of the land before the school was built, tales of a small settlement wiped out by a mysterious illness, of disputes over property lines, and whispers of a curse placed on the ground by a scorned woman. Each piece of history added depth to the haunting, painting a picture of a place steeped in sorrow and unresolved pain. Meanwhile, Lily focused on the personal stories of the students and staff who had experienced the haunting firsthand. She conducted interviews, gathering accounts that ranged from fleeting shadows to full apparitions. What struck her most was the emotional impact, the fear, the sadness, and sometimes the comfort that the spirits seemed to bring. One story stood out, that of Owen, a freshman who had been reluctant to join the Paranormal Society but found himself drawn in by a series of strange dreams. Owen described visions of a young boy playing near the old oak tree, a boy who seemed lost and alone. The dreams were vivid, filled with laughter and tears, and left Owen with a sense of urgency to uncover the boy's story. The group decided to focus their next investigation on the oak tree and the surrounding grounds. They hoped to connect with the spirit Owen had seen and to understand the significance of the tree in the school's haunting. As the new school year began, the Paranormal Society prepared for their most ambitious project yet, a full exploration of the school's history and its connection to the land. They planned to combine historical research, personal stories, and paranormal investigations to create a comprehensive picture of Hawthorne High's haunting. Their first step was to reach out to the community. They organized a town hall meeting, inviting residents to share their memories and experiences. The turnout was larger than expected, with people of all ages coming forward to tell stories that had been kept secret for years. Among the attendees was Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who had attended Hawthorne High in the 1950s. She spoke of a time when the school was a vibrant center of the community but was also shadowed by unexplained events. She recalled a fire drill that turned into chaos when students reported seeing figures in the smoke, and a teacher who disappeared mysteriously, never to be found. Her stories, along with many others, added new layers to the haunting, revealing a pattern of tragedy and mystery that spanned decades. The Paranormal Society documented the meeting, recording the stories and collecting artifacts brought by attendees, old photographs, letters, and personal mementos that seemed to carry the weight of history. Back at the school, the group began analyzing the new information. They mapped out locations of reported hauntings, noting clusters around the auditorium, the basement, the oak tree, and the old gymnasium. Each site held its own stories and spirits, creating a complex network of supernatural activity. Their investigations became more focused and methodical. They used thermal cameras, EVP recorders, and motion sensors, hoping to capture definitive evidence of the haunting. Nights were spent exploring the school's darkest corners, guided by the stories they had collected. One night, as they investigated the gymnasium, the group experienced a series of unsettling events. The lights flickered erratically, the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty space, and a basketball rolled across the floor on its own. Then, a voice whispered through the darkness, calling out a name, Eleanor. The mention of Eleanor's name sent a chill through the group. They knew they were close to uncovering something significant. The following days were filled with anticipation and preparation. Sarah and Lily worked to piece together Eleanor's story, hoping to understand her connection to the school and the haunting. Their research revealed that Eleanor had been a gifted student and performer, beloved by her classmates and teachers. Her disappearance had left a void in the community, a wound that never fully healed. The Paranormal Society planned a special event, a memorial performance in the auditorium, dedicated to Eleanor and the other spirits who lingered in the school. They hoped the ceremony would honor the past and bring some measure of peace. On the night of the performance, the auditorium was filled with students, staff, and community members. The air was thick with emotion, the weight of history palpable. As the music began, a soft glow appeared near the stage, and a figure materialized, Eleanor, radiant and serene, her presence filling the room with a sense of calm. The performance was a turning point, a moment when the past and present converged in a shared act of remembrance. In the days that followed, the haunting seemed to ease. The cold spots warmed, the shadows softened, and the whispers grew quieter. But the spirits of Hawthorne High were not gone. They remained, watching and waiting, their stories woven into the fabric of the school. For Sarah and the Paranormal Society, the journey was far from over. They had uncovered truths, faced fears, and forged connections that transcended time. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that the most haunted school in America was also a place of hope, healing, and enduring mystery. The school year was winding down, but the energy around Hawthorne High was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. The haunting, once a source of fear and mystery, had become a catalyst for connection between students, staff, and the community. It was as if the spirits themselves had woven a thread through the lives of everyone who walked those halls, reminding them that history was alive and that every story mattered. Sarah stood by the old oak tree in the courtyard one late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across the grass. The tree's twisted branches reached toward the sky, a silent witness to decades of secrets and sorrow. She thought about Owen's dreams, the boy who had seen the spirit of a child playing beneath these very branches. She wondered if the tree was a gateway, a place where the living and the dead could meet, if only for a moment. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft footsteps of Lily, who joined her with a stack of notebooks and a tired but hopeful smile. "We've come so far," Lily said quietly, "but there's still so much to learn." Sarah nodded. "It's like the school is a living storybook, and we're just starting to read the chapters." Together, they walked back toward the building, the weight of the past mingling with the promise of the future. The school was more than bricks and mortar. It was a vessel for memories, a place where the echoes of those who came before could still be heard. Inside, the halls were alive with the sounds of students preparing for final exams, laughter spilling from classrooms, and the occasional creak of the old building settling. But beneath the surface, the presence remained, a quiet reminder that some stories never truly end. The Paranormal Society gathered one last time before summer break, reflecting on their journey. They shared stories, reviewed footage, and talked about the impact the haunting had on their lives. For many, it had been a transformative experience, a lesson in empathy, history, and the power of listening. Sarah spoke for the group. "We started this to find answers, but what we found was so much more. We found connection to each other, to the past, and to the spirits who call this place home." The group agreed to continue their work, to keep the stories alive, and to honor the memories that shaped Hawthorne High. They planned to create a digital archive, a living record of the school's history and haunting, accessible to students and the community for years to come. As the meeting ended, Sarah lingered in the empty library, the soft glow of the setting sun filtering through the windows. She thought about the faces she had seen, the students, the teachers, the spirits, all part of a tapestry woven through time. Her phone buzzed with a message from Owen. "Saw the boy again today." He smiled. A small smile touched Sarah's lips. The haunting was not just about fear or mystery. It was about hope, healing, and the enduring power of stories. Outside, the old oak tree stood tall against the twilight sky, its branches whispering secrets to the wind. And somewhere, just beyond the veil, the spirits of Hawthorne High watched and waited, their stories alive in the hearts of those who dared to listen. Because in the most haunted school in America, the past was never truly gone. It was a living, breathing part of the present, a reminder that every story matters and every voice deserves to be heard.